Hi, this is Mrs. Lockett, and this is our first video for Unit 2 on cytology, and this is going to be about prokaryotes and eukaryotes, unicellular and multicellular organisms, and microscopes. So there's a whole lot involved in this particular video. So first, the essential question is, why is the cell the basic unit of life? That's kind of what we'll be talking about for this entire unit. And our learning outcomes today are that you will be able to form an operational definition of the term cell. That means that you will know exactly what it means to be a cell. And you can compare and contrast cell types, not cell sizes. Okay, so some early scientists really quickly. 1665, so what was that, 3.5 centuries ago? A little bit. All right, Robert Hooke, British guy, and he is the first person to use a compound microscope, a compound light microscope, and he observed cell walls from cork cells. This is the drawing he made, and he coined the term cell. And he did that because he thought that cells look like the rooms that the monks slept in a monastery. Okay, next guy is Anton van Leeuwenhoek. He is Dutch and was actually a custodian in his day job, but he loved microscopy. And he is the first guy to see living things, microscopic living things. Before him, they did not know that there was an entire world of microscopic heebie-jeebies living out there. And he looked at everything that he could possibly find to see what was in there. And he looked at the scrapings off teeth, and he looked at the canal water, which is the water that not only did they drink from it, but they also put all their waste in. So there's all kinds of stuff in there. He looked at everything, and he was kind of an interesting guy because he kept every single specimen he ever looked at. If he wanted to look at a new specimen, he built an entire new microscope in order to do it, and he had hundreds of microscopes when he passed. All right, next three scientists are Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow, and these guys are famous because they came up with what is going to be called the cell theory, which is kind of a big deal for us today in our notes. So Schleiden was a German botanist. He worked in the 1830s, and he looked at plants and looked at plants and looked at plants, and he came up with an inference that all plants are made of cells. The next guy is Theodor Schwann, also a German scientist. He was working at the same time but across the country, and he's looking at animals, and he determines that, or he infers that all animals are made of cells because all the animals he looked at were made of cells. And then finally we have a German physician, Rudolf Virchow, and he was a little bit after these guys, but not much. And he came up with the theory that cells can only come from existing cells. He said cells don't spontaneously appear, they have to come from other cells. So the cell theory is that all living things are composed of cells, and you need to know all three parts of this. This is a big, big deal, okay? So all living things are composed of cells. Cells are the basic unit of structure and function in living things, and new cells are produced from existing cells. We have added some things. This has to do kind of with the characteristics of life. So in the modern cell theory, we've added that energy flow occurs within cells. It means you have to eat, and you have to break down that energy. Cells contain hereditary information, which is called DNA, that is passed from cell to cell during cell division. And finally, all cells are basically the same in chemical composition in organisms of similar species. So our cells are all human cells are going to be very similar. All giraffe cells are going to be very similar. What characteristics do all living things share? Number one, they're all made of cells. Where are my fingers? There we go. Number two, they grow and develop. Number three, they use and convert energy. They eat and poop. Number four, they maintain homeostasis. That is an internal balance between what's inside your body and what's outside your body. So we maintain homeostasis for temperature. We maintain homeostasis for the amount of water that's in our bodies, and so on and so forth. These are all things that your body's constantly keeping in balance. pH. All species evolve over time, so humans have evolved over time. Bacteria evolve very quickly over time. All organisms can, or all living things can reproduce. Got to make babies if you're going to be alive. There is a universal genetic code that is nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. And finally, we respond to the environment. So responding to the environment means that if I am a bacteria and I need light, I'm going to move to where light is. If I am a bacteria and I don't like oxygen, I'm going to move away from oxygen. So I respond to the environment. Okay, what do all cells have in common? These are the four things that all cells can do. Number one, they have cytoplasm. Number two, they have DNA at some point. Number three, they have a cell membrane to keep everything intact. And number four, they have ribosomes, which make proteins, because if I don't make proteins, I cannot be alive. All right, so how do you classify cells? You might have classified cells before this as plant or animal, but that's not a very good way to classify cells. We have a much better way, and that is to divide cells into prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotic cells are going to be all of our bacteria, and that is a Greek word meaning before nucleus, and so all the prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. No nucleus. Pro means no. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, U means true, and so these are cells with a true nucleus, and so that is going to be everything except the bacteria. All right, so here is a table that runs through what the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes are. So they are paired statements. So prokaryotes do not have a nucleus where eukaryotes do. Prokaryotes have genetic material in a simple DNA chain in a circle, whereas eukaryotes have DNA material that is found in the nucleus and is linear. Prokaryotes do not have membrane-bound organelles. That means they don't have any kind of organelles that are sacs that have membranes. We, of course, as eukaryotes, do have them. There's a couple of very simple pictures. Prokaryotes are small, eukaryotes are large, prokaryotes are simple, eukaryotes are complex, prokaryotes are unicellular, prokaryotes are unicellular, eukaryotes are unicellular or multicellular. I hope I was saying all of those correctly. If I'm not, please read and don't listen to me. The members of the prokaryotes are the bacteria, and the members of the eukaryotes are the plants, the animals, the protists, and the fungi, the other four kingdoms. All right. What is another word for one cell? That would be unicellular. And unicellular is when you have only one organism, and unicellular, or one cell, excuse me. The unicellular organisms are the dominant life form on Earth. There are more of them than there will ever be of us. And they're cool because one cell has all the functions that your body has. This is a euglena. This is a unicellular eukaryotic organism. All right, and if I have lots of cells, then I am multicellular. And if I am multicellular, then my cells have to specialize. I can't have all my cells doing all the same job. It's a waste. And so I have specialized, so I have some cells doing one thing, some cells doing something else. It provides great variety of cells, and my cells have to be able to cooperate and communicate in order for the multicellular organism to get the job done. Okay, so one of the cool things about biology that we are kind of missing out on right now is being able to use a microscope, but you still have to know the parts. So unfortunately, this is going to be the way it happens. So hopefully you know some of these parts already, but if you don't, they are all listed on the next slide. So we have the eyepiece at the very top, and then the body tube, which actually holds the eyepiece at a certain distance from the objectives. You have a nose piece which spins. Let's see if I can get my pointer here. You have the nose piece right here which spins, and it will move these objectives around so that the bottom one is looking down into the light source. You have the arm, which is how we carry the microscope. you have the stage, this black thing right here. This is the stage, and that's where we support our slide. There's an aperture here that the light can pass through, and the objective is, of course, straight above it so that you can see. We have 3 levels of objectives for our microscopes. We have scanning power, which is 4x. We have the low power, which is 10x, and we have the high power, which is 40x. And we'll talk a little bit about magnification on the next slide. Stage clips hold your slide. These are very primitive kinds. You are very lucky at Grassfield because we have mechanical stages at ours, and so all of ours are, they look a little different. The stage clips actually hold the sides of the slide in instead of the top. There's a diaphragm under here. A diaphragm is an aperture that will open and close, and will allow more or less light through your specimen. The light source, you guys are lucky that you have electric microscopes. Back in the day when I was growing up, we had a mirror here, and we had to use a lamp or the sunlight in order to see through our specimens. The base is, of course, supporting everything. Whoop, go back. The base is supporting everything. And then we have our adjustment knobs right here. So coarse adjustment are big movements. You have a big knob to do that. Fine adjustment are going to be teeny tiny little incremental adjustments in order to focus more clearly. So I use the coarse adjustment at the beginning to basically find my specimen, and then I use the fine adjustment to make it really clear when I'm at higher powers. Okay, so here is a slide that has the labeled parts as well as the functions. Magnification, so you've got number 3 is the well, these are labeled a little different. Number 3 is really scanning power. It will magnify the specimen 40 times because this one is 4 and the eyepiece is 10x, and so the combination of 4 times 10 is going to be 40. The low power is 10x, and so 10 times 10 is 100, and the high power is 40x, so 40 times 10 is 400. So I can magnify up to 400 times the normal size using a typical high school compound light microscope. All right. So then this is going to compare my 2 sets of microscopes. So we've talked about compound light microscopes, but there are other kinds of microscopes called electron microscopes, and they are much more powerful. They're big. I used one in college. They were really fun. But they have some limitations. Number 1, everything has to be dead because it works in a vacuum. Number 2, it's very big, so you can't move it around. The images are black and white, although they are mostly colorized by computer these days. But the big advantage is that you have much more resolution and more magnification. They are very, very sensitive and will give you great pictures. Compound light microscopes, less resolution, less magnification, a color image if there's color there. Easy to transport, light from a lamp, and your specimens can be living or dead. One of the funnest things was looking at pond water. So sadly, we're not going to get to do that unless we get back in school, and then maybe we'll have a chance. Okay, this is a prokaryote. I do want you to draw one. Just make sure that you understand what all the parts are. So I have this tan background here, that is the cytoplasm. The blue dots are the ribosomes that are making the proteins. The orangey brown squiggle is the DNA, which is it is a circular molecule that is all in a ball. The green is my cell membrane. The pink is my cell wall, which is outside of the cell membrane. And then this particular bacteria has a flagella that will help it move around. So that is a simple prokaryote, and I want to make sure that you can draw and label one of those. So that is our lecture, and y'all have a great day, and if you have any questions, please bring them to class.